guys, how's it going? Welcome back to Sully's Models. In this video today we're going to be looking at the Republican F-84G. This is going to be a one of the Thunderbirds aircraft from back in 1953, I think, if I remember rightly. So what we're going to be doing in this video, obviously I'm going to give you a bit of a kit review, and we'll start some of the build as well. So with this one, I'm hoping after the last build it's going to be pretty plain sailing, or at least a little bit easier than what we had to deal with last time on the XF 103 Thunder Warrior. It was an awful kit, that was. It was quite depressing how badly that turned out. But yeah, so we'll have a look at the kit and we'll get into the build. Okay then, so this is what we'll be working with next. This is the Tamiya Republic F-84G Thunderbird. So I'm not sure actually how old this kit is. I was judging by the price at $12.25 for a 48 scale. He's relatively old. Maybe a couple of years ago, I think. I'm not 100% sure really. But yeah, so this is a very nice nice bit of box art. But of course we really want to look at the kit itself. So there's instructions. We'll get to that second. So okay, we'll first look at the cockpit first, or some of the cockpit and the end fuel tanks. So yeah, it's very well detailed. Obviously quite nice, nicely kit. I mean, I find Tamiya in general anyway they're pretty good for the price as well. Tamiya is one of my favourite and probably highly rated kits that I like to work with anyway, because the detail is so nice. So that's some of the cockpit. Fuel tanks, there's access ladder there as well, so it's a nice little option which you don't get very often. Then we have the main fuselage. Now this is one of those kits that has been done in a fashion where you don't actually have to paint it. You can just stick it all together and it's pretty much done. Now, because as always, there's going to be a couple of odd seam lines that we're going to have to get rid of, particularly in the center here where these two panels, these panels will meet the panels on the other side, same on the bottom. So we're going to want to blend those in, so we'll end up losing this top color that they've pre-sprayed on. It'll probably need a bit of a general light rub as well before painting, because I don't think the paint sticks to this very well. So yeah, that's a little bit annoying, but again, you know, it's not too bad when you just want to, you know, just make the kit. You're not too fussed really. So but yeah, the detailing in this is absolutely superb. You know, rivets, you know, for the panels, and you know, even just the general panel lines, they're nice. They're relatively deep, but obviously not too deep to look, you know, wrong or a bit weird. So yeah, that they're very nice. The wing detail there as well for the tailplane is also very nicely done there as well as some of the internal panel lining there. The only issue there, I mean, this is going to be all closed up anyway, but the only issue there is you've got a couple of puncture marks there when they push the mould out, so that would also be quite annoying, and particularly that one there, a bit fiddly. On that one, there's one there, was a two, I think there's two there, so that'll be a bit of a pain to you know, get out, but still, so his main body there, very nice. And we move on to the wings, so I'll show you the inside again. Inside of the panel doors for the undercarriage, nicely detailed. In the wheel bay there also is nicely detailed. but again, even the wings in general and some of the other drop tanks, which I think these are going to be the ones that will be needing for so not drop tanks, so the fuel tanks will be using for this, which I assume would be for smoke, I'm guessing, rather than the fuel, potentially, I don't know. But there's also the option there just to have just the wing tips instead of having these tanks on the end. But again, very nicely detailed there as well. Very, very smart. So of course, because this is one of the Thunderbirds from 1953, I think, if I remember. We'll have a look in a second. So that's instructions. But we've got all the decals there. Quickly get them out. I've done this before, sorry. There we go. So again, we've got very nice decals there. We'll probably, if we use these, I'm planning on actually stenciling these out, which I'll get into in a minute. But I think with the tower, we'd have to paint that white first for the stars and the red stripe to go over the top. What else we've got down there? Obviously, United States Air Force there. We've even got the decals for the seat belt, control panel. All the usual that you'll see. But yeah, so the reason why I'm planning on making my own decals and masks for this is mainly because of the intake, and partly because I'm not 100% sure if these decals are going to wrap round nicely. Thinking about it, potential need to paint them side tanks. I'll tell you what, we'll get the instructions in for a second. And looking at how the paint scheme in the back. We're going to have to paint the blue and red anyway. So yeah, potentially probably might be easier actually just painting it, because I've got a thing when you've got to paint an area and then put a decal on over the top, it doesn't always look brilliant. But mainly is actually because the intake at the front, even though the outer part of the intake is actually on the decal, the inside of it is going to still be silver. Now, I'm more than 100% sure. I've still got to do a wee bit of research on this aircraft in particular, and the Thunderbird's markings. I'm 100% sure that the inside of the intake is also red. Hence the reason why I want to potentially mask as much of this as possible. I may potentially be a little bit lazy and just cut the stars out and still put them on as a decal, because that's going to take a lot of time to cut out and mask out, cut it out, trace it and all that. So they potentially may be decaled anyway. We'll see when we get further into it. When we get to that stage, I'll start to worry about that more later on, because obviously we've still got a fair bit of work before even that gets to that stage anyway. So but yeah, it's like I said, because sometimes, particularly like I said with the end tanks there, as you can see, the white is a decal but the red and blue aren't. And even though we're going to have to paint these on, even with the right colours, because I know I'm going to have to make my own, because I'm going to be lazy and not, or tight more than lazy than actually buying the right colours. So I'll make my own. But even then, even if you had the right ones, they don't tend to match very well with the decal, and sometimes it looks blatantly obvious that, one's decal and one has been painted. So that's the reason why I'm planning on doing it that way. But it says that's something to worry about a little bit further down the line. So we'll have a look at the rest of instructions. I know I've done this back to front the way I usually do it, but it doesn't really matter, does it? But again, Tamiya's standardised, you know, plans and instructions, you know, same as always, very well laid out, very well instructed. I tend to find, you know, I find these so easy to follow and not have to worry too much about trying to actually figure it out, because all the, you know, all the pointy lines and all that sort of thing, you know, I tend to find they help you out very well, without thinking, oh, is that actually that way, or is it there, or, you know, because sometimes some instructions, and I think it's partly due to the complication or the complicated fitting of some parts, not in the case of this one. You know, you spend about 20 minutes trying to figure out where it goes, and loads of dry fitting to try and figure it out. So, but yeah, very nicely laid out. One interesting thing that I've just remembered that I'd forgotten at the start is, if I can find it, where's the clear parts? It comes with a stainless steel ball. Now, at first point, I thought, what the hell's this doing here? But then I realised, because these type of aircraft in model form, obviously there's no weight to them, and being a tricycle undercarriage, they always tail heavy. They've given you a stainless steel ball or bearing, which will go underneath the cockpit in this little housing here. So, which is quite cool, and, you know, saves you prattling around with trying to find something to put in. Now, very quickly, on a slightly off from this kit, but with this type of thing, if you are needing to put a weight in the nose of an aircraft, don't, or try and avoid, I wouldn't use any form of clays or putties or anything like that, or even plasticine, because depending on, this is actually mainly where depending on when you actually are displaying it, and how it's displayed, but if there's a lot of heat around the model, this expands and splits the model in half. Okay, that's over exaggerating, but it splits in the area where you've put the nose weight. So what I usually do is actually use air rifle pellets normally, just water loading, super glue, or even actually sometimes PVA, just enough for it to hold where you put the two parts together, if you do it in that sort of fashion. So you've got a few weight inside either half of the aircraft. You know, if it's you know, a fit like this, the nose section is a solid piece, just bung it all in, put a bit of glue so it just holds, just so you can jam it on the front of the airframe. So yeah, so, you know, be very careful in what you put in the nose of an airframe if it has a tricycle undercarriage. So there we go, that's what the kit looks like. That's what the instructions also look like. Well, there's the proper colour scheme I should have been looking at. But there we go. So it gives you a I hope a good idea of how this kit looks and how hopefully it's going to turn out. I think it's going to turn out quite well, actually. This is actually going to have wheels up, which is something I generally don't do. But Pete, who wants me to build this model for him, actually wants it for reference for a painting, because Pete does a lot of painting, and he's asked me if I could do this for him because he hasn't quite got the time to be doing this. I know he said don't worry too much about it, but I tend to be a bit of a perfectionist, so I'll get it looking as good as I can, even though I know he only wants it as a reference. So anyway, there you go, that's the kit, and we will see how it turns out. So of course we're going to start with the cockpit, gluing that nose weight on the front there, realising afterwards there was actually no point to this, because of having the wheels up, so that wasn't needed whatsoever. So anyway, so we move on to basing the cockpit. I'm using Vallejo black primer. I actually use this for most blacks anyway, as well as just being primer. It's a good primer, nice and clean, you know, a nice finish afterwards. And then after we've done this, we'll also do some of the smaller parts, mainly the ejector seat and a small part that goes in the back of the canopy. So I've based the cockpit using RAF green. Obviously I've sprayed it in, giving us a nice bit of mess. So afterwards just get a bit of that same Vallejo primer and paint up all the edges and some of the instrument panel, and then afterwards we'll do a little bit with that. So now I've got that all looking good. I'm happy with the way that is. I'm not going to bother using the instrument decals because you don't really see them most of the time. So what I've done is with a fairly stiff brush, bit of white paint and dry brushed over all the raised parts, and that will give you like a mix of sort of scratches and a little bit of definition on the instrument panel, so it sticks out and pops a little bit there. You know, so you don't really see the decals in there anyway most of the time, and I find this is quite a nice way of still doing something with the cockpit, but you know, not going too far with it. So next is putting the cockpit into the fuselage and putting the two fuselage pieces together. Now, best thing to do, I find, when putting the two fuselage parts together, or pretty much any part really, is sort of dry fit them together first, see how it looks, tape them up and try and get them seam lines to match up, and trying to stop any sort of step in between the two parts, because it's going to make it a bit more difficult later on to try and clean these seam lines out. And then what I use is Tamiya extra thin. This basically is the same as your normal contact cement, but it seeps through between the panels, very little mess, if any at all, and it's a very good glue. It's very adhesive, it's quite strong, but it does dry quite quickly as well. So within parts like the tail, I tend to put a little bit more on and try and get a clamp on there as quickly as possible. So there we have it. The fuselage is all stuck together. There's a couple of seam lines in there, that generally is anyway. On the bottom, you'll see in a minute, I've used a watercolour pen marker thingy. This helps me sort of see any seam lines without needing to get the airbrush all the time and just check in, see if those seam lines are gone. Now, moving on to the wings. I'm sanding the two contact parts of the wings. I don't normally do it, but the reason in the case of this, as you can see, it's got that really nice silver paint finish. The way this kit has been done is in a way that you don't really have to paint it. You can stick it all together and put your markings on, jobs are good. And the problem is that the glue doesn't really like it. It has to work its way through that coating to adhese the two parts together, and you know, it just doesn't always work. So scrub that out. I really like fine sander, and then you know, clamp the two parts together and run a bit of glue between the parts. So next, wing assembly. Actually to the fuselage. These fit actually quite nicely. The wings do slightly come up a little bit, so there was a little bit of gappage, but nothing major. I found sticking my finger in the wheel well, pulling it as close to the fuselage as possible, and then using a bit of masking tape from the wingtip to the fuselage to help that set without it drooping and giving it its right profile. So next comes the slightly awkward part of the undercarriage doors. Now, because it says before Pete wants these to be up, there's no option in the kit to let you do that, which usually means that the wheel well and the undercarriage doors generally don't fit very well. Fortunately for this, they did, but to make things a little bit easier, I've stuck a bit of masking tape down one part of it up to stick the undercarriage doors on, then a bit of again that liquid cement between the door panels, which will hopefully hold it all together and let us put it into the wheel well itself. Still using that same bit of sticky tape to hold them all together. Place it over the wheel well and glue around the edges, leave that to set for a while and peel that tape away. And of course, all hope is that it stays in place. So I think you agree there, it looks pretty good. Did have a bit of a cock up there which I had to sand off, but that wasn't an issue at all. So now moving to the external fuel tanks, or the wingtip fuel tanks, or whatever they're called. Bit of a similar situation as the wings. They're quite heavy, obviously. There's a large chunk of plastic and a smaller bit to mount it to the wing. So again, same as the wings, glue it in place. I use standard cement because it gave me a bit more time to play with this part, and again, bit of sticky tape down, hold it in place and set it right, and with a bit of luck again, it all dries in the right position. So next to a more fiddlier part is masking off the canopy. So as you can see there, I've got some stencils to help me mask out the canopy. As you can see, some sort of overly long oval bits to try and figure out which is the best bit to help mask that corner part out. With the straights, obviously just use a thin bit of masking tape. I have actually got a video out on this which I'll put in the link on how to mask canopies. It's quite simple and easy, so check that out. But for these parts I'm using, I don't even know what the technical term is, but my technical term is a knife with a twiddly end. Okay, so this makes it a lot easier cutting round you know, corner parts or circular parts or whatever. You know, so you just very lightly run that round the edges of your stencil there, and then obviously cut it to sort of size and then place that on the canopy. So it's quite it's a simple process. It's time consuming, but it saves you a little bit of money rather than forking out on proper masking sets for the aircraft, although those are a lot easier. But says if you want to check out the video I have done on canopy masking, so there's a link below, so give that a bit of a watch. Again, hopefully that will help you out. So next we're going to use some liquid mask. I'm going to try and pronounce this, Abdelilung, or whatever it says on the bottle there. It's a good liquid mask, but I mean any liquid mask is alright. I just bought this as a try out a couple of years ago, but it's pretty good stuff. But all you need to do is get a blob on the end of a brush, preferably silicone ones really, because it's easy to clean out. But of course, just place that over the central area, because it's going to save you again a lot more time rather than masking out the entire canopy. Unless it's sort of like a bubble canopy, that's a little bit easier to do, but again, this just makes things that little bit quicker. Of course, we'll repeat the same process on the back part of the canopy. As you can see, you know, makes things a lot quicker and a lot easier using that liquid mask. So once we've let the liquid mask dry, I'm going to use this glue and glaze. This stuff is fantastic for using for canopies. It's better than using your glue because it will stop any fogging on the plastic of the canopy. Use the cocktail stick or a needle or something like that to spread it across the area where the canopy needs to go. Place it on, leave that to dry, and it dries perfectly clear. Because I've still got to fit the pilot in, I've got to do a bit later, but just to move things a bit quicker, dabbing a few parts on so I can place the main part of the canopy on, so I can paint that all together. Just using those couple of 6 dabs means that I can remove the canopy later without really having to force it away from the fuselage. But yep, that's so far that's going on pretty well, and all done. So there we go. That's the obviously the review and build so far. Next video we'll be looking at painting the aircraft. Hopefully I can make my own masks for the markings for this aircraft. We'll see how that goes. So yeah, as you've seen, it's absolutely a fantastic kit. It's really nice, very well made, cracking detail on it. So yeah, it looks pretty cool, and hopefully should turn out pretty cool as well. So thanks very much guys for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Also you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook as well at Sully's Models. So again, thanks very much guys, and I'll catch you again soon.